Hi guys, it's Carol and Casey
Hi.
and the dogs. I am so sorry I haven't done a video I think I've done one since Christmas. Since Christmas, I have just been zoned out. That's all I can tell you. But I have an appointment with my caseworker tomorrow and we'll figure me out maybe. But anyway, I'm trying to get started. You know, I had that goal to empty my living room and get the carpet shampooed and vacuumed and get rid of some clutter. I did that, except I've still got clutter over there on the TV that I've got to get off, but pretty much I did everything else. So that one goal will be done by tonight. I don't have anything to talk about, so I'm going to tell you about this book. I'm going to tell Casey about it because I know she won't read it because she doesn't like to read things about Christmas after Christmas is over with.
Yeah.
Yep.
In November, I'll start reading Christmas books.
Yeah. I'm kind of that way too. Once Christmas is over, then it's over. It's over. But this book I had, so I went ahead and read it, and it's not really Christmassy. I mean, the season is Christmas, but it doesn't come up much in this book.
That's funny for it to be named The Christmas Shop.
Yeah. I know I can't read the whole book to you, but I'm going to read passages. I know I can do that. Anyway, this is called The Christmas Shop by Melody Carlson. Let me tell you about her. Melody Carlson is the popular author of more than 200 books, including The Christmas Bus, The Christmas Dog, and Christmas at Harrington's. She was recently nominated for a Romantic Times Career Achievement Award in the Inspirational market. So that's who the author is. Well, the book takes place in this little town called Parish Springs. And if you've ever lived in a little town, you know how little towns are. No one in Parish Springs could recall exactly when Matilda Honeycutt came to town. No one seemed to know where she came from either, but most everyone remembers the day Matilda Honeycutt purchased the old Barton building. Not because she made much noise when her bid won the rundown brick building in the sealed envelope auction conducted by the city, but because Councilman Snyder swore so loudly that patrons in the coffee shop next door to his real estate office actually heard his tantrum. He quickly spread the rumor that this interloper snuck into town and practically stole that property right out from under the noses of the good citizens of Parish Springs. That's because he wanted to buy it. Parish Springs is a little town struggling, and he's the real estate guy, been a city councilman for 30 years. He decided what he wants to do is he's going to buy that building for nothing because it's just been sitting there. And he's going to get a big box discount store to come in and put their business in there. Well, nobody else in town wants a big box discount store because that'll put their businesses out of business. Oh, my nose itches every time I turn the camera on.
For those of you that live in a small town, is it ever like the ones in the books?
Oh, I grew up in a small town.
She grew up in a small town, and no, it's not though. It has, I don't know.
In a small town, everybody knows everybody else, at least knows who they are, everything about them and what they're doing almost before they do it.
But your small town is dying. Are there any cute small towns out there that are like the books where it's just, the whole town is just cute? And
oh, we would love to move to a cute old little town. As long as it has a good library and a Walmart supercenter, we'd be okay.
Nobody wants a Walmart though in their town.
Riadoso has a Walmart supercenter.
Really?
Yes.
Riadoso and Cloudcroft. You need to go to Cloudcroft. Is it Cloudcroft?
Yeah.
New Mexico?
It's in New Mexico, in southern New Mexico, in the mountains. And I have always wanted to live in Riadoso. When I was in junior high, I was in Future Homemakers of America.
Mm-hmm.
You guys probably remember this. Back when I was in junior high and high school, girls could be a homemaker, a nurse, or a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
That's what women were supposed to aspire to. Boys had Future Farmers of America, and they had auto mechanics and wood shop that girls were not allowed to do when I was a kid. Anyway, I was in Future Homemakers of America, and we got to take a bus trip from the little town I lived in
Wow.
the northeastern part of New Mexico to Ruidoso. I'd never been out of town before, so this was a big trip for me. And Ruidoso is in the mountains. I kind of grew up in the desert plains area. I had never seen mountains before. It was gorgeous,
Except for one little mountain.
Yeah. Anyway, we stayed in cabins, and on the way there, we stopped next to the river and had a picnic lunch. And there was this little business that sold cherry cider. I just fell in love with that place, and I've always wanted to live in Ruidoso, but never have. But anyway, there are some little towns that have a Walmart supercenter. That's what we need. That and UPS, and we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, everybody I know from a small town knows that everybody knows your business and what you're doing. And in one book I read by that Nancy Brown, I think it was, she said all small towns are this way, where everybody knows your business and what you're doing. And if they don't know, then when the newspaper comes out on the weekend, then they'll hear the rest of the story. They'll find out the rest.
Do the newspapers really have people's personal information, the gossip in it?
When I was a kid, the newspaper had births in it. You know, like
Yes,
who had
because I
babies.
have my birthday, and
Yeah, they don't do that anymore because that's against
you got a little bit of toothpaste. I mean, what's it right there? There you go.
HIPAA rules.
My first birthday was in the newspaper. I remember I have a clipping of it and who was there. Forgot about that.
Little towns like that. You know, I told you about the book Looking Back, Texas, that was about a girl that came from Luckenbach, Texas. Luckenbach, Texas, there's nothing there but the dance hall, a general store. I think there's a third building, and I think 13 people live there. But they have a newspaper that comes out once a month.
Wow.
So,
okay, we'll get back to the book. Sorry.
at Taos, New Mexico, Julia Roberts, I don't know if she still does, but she used to have a ranch at Taos. And she was on Tonight Show one time, and she was talking about her town. The newspaper came out twice a week. And
I love Taos also. Y'all should go to Taos and all that
Santa
area.
Fe. And
yes, it's wonderful.
the Enchanted Circle is what that
Yes.
road is called, that goes from Angel Fire and
Taos and
Red River and Taos and around. Well, anyway, back to this story. This is a little town. Well, Councilman Snyder, that wanted to get that building for next to nothing, he storms over to the city manager's office and says, I want you to extend the deadline, even though she's already won the bid. He wants them to reopen it and extend the deadline, and he'll offer to pay 10% more than what she did. So he could get that building. And the city manager said that would put their city at risk for a serious lawsuit, so no. Well, he was going to get this building anyway. Toby and Molly are playing, and
Molly's telling him, no, you cannot get my toy.
she's got her toy, and she's telling Buzz
Where is
off.
your toy, Toby?
Uh,
Where'd it go?
Let me see. Oh, the city manager's new. Her name's Susanna. The former city manager had been there forever and a day, and he finally retired, and it was a good old boys club running this town. George says, he sees them, Susanna and Matilda, going over and unlocking the Barton building door like they owned the place when she just won the bid yesterday.
So she does own the place.
Okay, George felt certain this state of affairs would not have occurred back when Leroy Stanton managed their fair city. But Leroy had retired last spring, and after many interviews and candidates, Susanna Elton was hired to replace him. Her work experience hadn't even been all that impressive. She'd been an assistant to a city manager for less than 10 years, even though it was a larger town. George suspected the other council members were swayed by her appearance as much as her fancy college degree. Despite his attempt to warn them of the dangers of youth in positions of power, the upstart got the job. She's not that youthful. She has a daughter that's like 13. And now this. Leave it to a woman to foul things up royally. He scowled at the two of them. Susanna, as usual, looked like she planned to be photographed for some highfalutin fashion magazine, where that strange Matilda Honeycutt character looked more like a bag lady. What a pair. And they'd messed things up really bad. Well, when he sees them going into that building as if she owned it, he stomps over to the little newspaper office. The newspaper office consists of Tommy, who had inherited it from his father, and a part-time receptionist named Helen. That was it.
You're basically reading the whole book if you're going to read all those bookmarked pages.
No,
you
not.
gotta tell them if they want to read this book. You got to tell them what's it called.
Okay.
Warning.
Well, I've got to get this description of Matilda in.
Okay.
Councilman Snyder, I think his first name's George, stomps over to the newspaper office to tell Tommy he's got to investigate this because something suspicious is going over there. And Tommy says, what makes you think that? And he says, well, for starters, this strange broad sneaks into town with no friends, no connections, nothing. She doesn't seem to know a single soul, doesn't even have a residence here. And so Tommy says, well, how do you know that? And he says, well, because his maid sister works at the Golden Door Motel, and he knows that's where she's staying. And he's been told she's a hoarder because she has boxes of stuff in the car and in her motel room. Then he says, Tommy's telling him, well, it takes all kinds, And George says, maybe so. But here's another thing. This woman looks about the closest thing to a homeless person I've ever seen. Yet here she is, purchasing a very valuable piece of real estate, getting it for a song, too. And Tommy couldn't help but smile, and he says, so does that mean you plan to get it for half a song? Anyway, then George is going on saying there's just something up. He says, for starters, she wears these offbeat, ratty-tatty clothes, sort of like hippies used to wear, with beads and strange shawls and these long, weird dresses. Oh, yeah, she's got long hair, too. Tommy says, long hair? Oh, yeah, that's something to get in an uproar about, Councilman. Maybe I should write an op-ed piece about long hair and how you can tell so much about a person just from the length, you think? It's long gray hair, stringy, like a witch. And he goes on and on and on and on. And Tommy is not interested in finding out what's going on, but he would like to interview for the newspaper just as a welcome to our town piece, because she's going to have some kind of business if she's buying this building. And nobody seems to know what that business is going to be. She's very quiet about that. Whenever anybody asks her what kind of business she's going to put in, she just smiles and said, you'll see at my grand opening. Well, Helen, she's that part-time receptionist at the newspaper office. She decides she'll go over and woman to woman see if she can't talk Matilda into giving her boss a little interview so they can promote her business. She knocks on the door and Matilda says, come in. And Helen says, are you open for business? And she says, it all depends. But you're more than welcome to come in and browse. Just let me get the lights turned on. She was just getting there for the day. She gets the lights on. She always says, let there be light. And Helen looks around the room, and the same old shelves were there from when it was a stationery store, but the merchandise doesn't seem to be in any particular order or the way goods should be laid out. A baseball mitt sat next to a crystal vase with a black pocketbook on the other side of it, and next to that was a worn-out rag doll. Really, it made no sense. What made even less sense to Helen was that this was obviously a thrift store. Exactly what Parish Springs did not want or need in this part of town. In fact, they had an ordinance against having a thrift store on Main Street. That's a big deal. They do not want a thrift store. So Helen says to Matilda, when do you plan to officially open? And Matilda says, I think perhaps I already have. And they just don't understand this woman. And Helen didn't know what to say to that, but she didn't want to be rude, so she was kind of looking around. And Matilda says, can I help you find something? And she says, no, I don't really need anything. And Matilda says, you don't need anything? And Helen says to her, well, I really need to go home and do the laundry and things like that. And Matilda says, I bet there's something you need here. Let's just go look around. Helen didn't want to, but she didn't want to be rude, so she followed her around. Now, when Matilda bought the building, it was dirty and run down and needed a lot of repair and cleaning up. She cleaned it up, painted it, and then on walls in different places, she painted sayings. Helen was looking around when she looked up, and she saw this sign up, this lettering up there that says, when dispersed 70 by 7, this precious gift is a slice of heaven. She wasn't quite sure what that meant, but something about the rhyme felt reassuring to her. In an odd way, it seemed familiar too. She just couldn't put her finger on it. How are you doing? Well, I don't really need anything. We all have needs, don't we? Matilda says. And so they're going around, and she's walking down this row, and Helen sees a dog-eared Webster's Dictionary with no front cover, a pair of peeling patent leather shoes, a red plastic plaid thermos, a set of warped measuring cups that look just like the ones that she used to have. I don't think there's anything here that I... And then she picks up the measuring cups. They were Tupperware, lime green, from around 1978, unless she was mistaken. Helen had owned an identical set at one time, back when she still used Tupperware. She must have purchased hundreds of dollars worth of stuff back in the late 70s and early 80s. Helen picked up that smallest measuring cup and just stared at it, hypnotized. But instead of seeing old Tupperware, she saw Joanne Spencer. She saw exactly how Joanne had looked when she first moved in next door. A painfully thin divorcee with dishwater blonde hair and pale blue eyes that looked frightened. She had befriended her. And then when Joanne began to sell Tupperware to make ends meet, Helen bought Tupperware from her, tried to help her out until Joanne helped herself to Helen's husband. Their affair lasted for nearly 10 years before Helen figured things out. Naturally, she threw Rich out, and Joanne naturally took him in. Eventually, they left town, and Helen threatened to kill them both if she ever saw them again. What do you think? Matilda says. Think. How do those measuring cups work for you? She's looking at them, and her hands start to tremble, and Matilda says, old things sometimes contain old stories. Don't you think? Well, Helen is all flustered, and Matilda puts the measuring cups in her hand and tells her, here, you just take these. These are a gift. And so she leaves. Well, throughout the book, people come in to complain about it being a thrift store or to see what's going on. And finally, one day, the sign company's there putting up a sign that says, the Christmas shop. Well, they think that's irreverent to call that place a Christmas shop because it's just full of junk. And everyone that comes in eventually finds something that Matilda says, I think you need this. One of the ladies, the new city manager, Susanna, is divorced, but her mother-in-law moves there with her. Now, her mother-in-law is Rose, and she's Hispanic and has quite a temper and is a no-nonsense person, has no patience for anybody messing around. She is, get it done, do it. Well, Matilda hired her to help her clean up this place. And then this one day, Rose realized that it's the Christmas season and there's shoppers everywhere, but nobody's coming into the store. And she's kind of worried about it. And Matilda says, they'll come. They'll come. She's very calm about the whole thing. And then Rose looked at things and she says, there are no prices on anything. And Matilda pointed to the wall at one of those odd sayings, and this is what it said. The sweet value of this treasure is impossible to measure. What does that mean? Rose mentally translated the words into her mother tongue Spanish, but that didn't seem to help much either. What do you think it means? Matilda said. Value you cannot measure made no sense to Rose. Does that mean I'm supposed to make an offer on something I want? Something like that. What is it you want, Rose? What is it worth? I don't know. I mean, what do you really want? Rose wanted to say there was absolutely nothing in here that she wanted, but she bit her tongue, and Matilda tells her, let's walk down this aisle and just look. And they're walking down the aisle when a familiar piece of Mexican pottery, a small, colorful canister just like her abuela had when Rose was a small girl, except that this canister had a crack in it and was missing its lid. Other than that, it was identical, same blue and yellow flowers. Rose picked it up, feeling the weight of the piece in her hands. It felt lighter than she remembered, but then she'd just been a little girl back then. Rose, ¿dónde está el caramelo? Rose had hidden a candy behind her back. She was supposed to get one when she'd finished her chores, but she had taken it anyway. Her abuela shook her head and returned it to the jar and began to tell her that those who were willing to wait usually got the best things in life, but those who refused to wait usually wound up with nothing but heartache. La Paz, Rose now said aloud. Matilda said quietly, patience and peace. Well, she goes on. Everybody that seems to come in, the new city manager is going. She came to tell her that they're going to shut her down because there's an order and she can't have a thrift store on Main Street. When Matilda says, let's just look around a little bit. And the new city manager sees an old broken locket.
I don't want to hear anymore because now I want to read it myself. So I'm going to go in here while you...
Oh, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop
okay.
right here. This locket was just exactly like the one her dad gave her when she was 16. Exactly. It was worn just the same way. So I'm going to stop here, and you're going to have to read the book to see why these people come in thinking they don't need anything and find something that has something to do with their past. The Christmas Shop. Melody Carlson. It's a very slender book, 168 pages, an easy read. Nothing I read is very deep or, going to be nominated for National Book Award or anything like that. I like gentle reads. This is a gentle read, very, very slender. So that's this book that
fun.
I read. Now, if I can pull myself together, just from Christmas until now, I've just been a couch potato. I've just been lethargic. That's what it is. That's what I'll tell the caseworker. I've been lethargic for 10 days or so. I do want to make bread. I do want to make chocolate sugar cookies. I do have to make that dreamsicle salad because I've had those ingredients since before Thanksgiving. Nothing that'll spoil. I want Casey to show us her diamond painting.
We'll do a video while I'm doing my diamond painting.
Yes, you remember it's that cow? And the background kind of looked like barnwood. It was different shades of gray. Well, Casey decided she really didn't care for the gray, so you bought new little stones in blues. So we'll do a video of her doing some of that. So anyway, I'm sorry I haven't done a video every day like I thought I was going to. Lethargic, that's my word for me. But I'll see if I can't pull myself together this week. Oh, I have something to tell you. I have this friend named Lindy. I've watched her videos for, at least a year or so. I mean, a long time. She's 75, lives in a van, works at Walmart. How I found her, she was interviewed by Carol from Glorious Life on Wheels. Carol had interviewed her a while back, and that's when I found Lindy. And then Carol interviewed her again, like in the last week or two. And asking Lindy to tell what it's really like to live in a van. Lindy told me she had just a little over 600 subs at the time Carol did the second interview. Carol did this interview. Carol has a big channel. Lindy got, I think she has almost 15,000 subs now, like within a week's time. I have given her a shout out before, and you may have gone over there to see her channel. It's Lindy's Adventurous Fan Adventures, I think. I'll stick the text in here. It used to be Lindy and Lovey. Lovey was her cat, but Lovey did not enjoy living in the van, so she had to give her to a friend. But anyway, isn't that awesome? She went from like 700 subs to 15,000 in like a week. Okay, I'm gonna go now. Talk to you later. Leave me a comment, and I'll see you on the next video.